welcome to our first noontime lecture. A few people, there are refreshments at the table at the back. There's some water, cheese and crackers, and some snacks there. And I'm Danny Castro. I am the Design and Development Director for the City of Quinta. I am myself and Charrette, our planning manager, are leading this effort for this Highway 111 corridor area plan. Thank you for coming. This is something that's very important that we get the input from the community members of La Quinta, so I really appreciate you taking the time of day to come for this lecture. Now the logistics, there are 2 bathrooms just to your right here. So here's a restroom, they're right there. So the purpose of these lectures is to inspire you with innovative tools and ideas and discuss associated trade-offs. This Highway 111 corridor area plan sets a vision for future improvements and for future development of the Highway 111 corridor here in La Quinta. It's everything from reimagining it to, again, setting a vision to look at and setting that for future development and seeing where we want Highway 111 to look like, to experience, all those things. I'm going to introduce our first speaker for today. His name is Stefanos Polizoidis. He will be speaking about vibrant corridors. Stefanos is the nation's foremost architect and urbanist. He is a partner at Pasadena's Wool and Polizoidis, a firm that has helped many communities reimagine their corridors into vibrant and thriving places. Stefanos will present elements of successful and vibrant corridors. One thing I want to mention is, so today's the noontime lecture at 6 p.m. today will begin the Charrette. We'll have some interaction here after the presentation. Any of your comments or thoughts are encouraged. We'll also have a 6 p.m. start of the Charrette where we're going to really get into some collaborative designing, and that'll be an iterative and progressive design workshop that will go on for day 2, which is tomorrow, and day 3, which is Friday. So you're welcome to attend any one or any of the events that you can. Tell your friends. So with that, I'm going to now have Stefanos come to the microphone.
Thank you, Dan, very kindly. You should think of me as Stefanos and forget all the other stuff. First name, business is the way we work during the Charrettes. Thank you all for being here. I think that there has been a little bit of a significant bump in the way this project was organized. Our great leader, Kaiser Ngawat, was actually leading this process, chief consultant, had a very major family problem abroad, had to fly out. So we, Vinayak, Barney and I, and the rest of our staff here, were called upon to organize this 3 days. We were actually sub-consultants of Kaiser and worked together very closely with him on a number of projects in the past. And we interviewed together, and we've been here a number of occasions since then. And so it's a natural thing for us to be doing that. It's terribly sad that he's not here. So we're thinking of him and his family, and we wish them well. The project for the 111 corridor is a particularly interesting one, and one that the city has been very wise to frame in this particular way in which it has been framed today. There are 2 parts to it. One of them is actually the configuration of the corridor itself in terms of landscape and transportation performance within the right-of-way. And the second one is the potential for development on either side. The kinds of projects that are now being built all over Southern California to replace corridor retail are called town centers because they're walkable, they're mixed in use. They are actually more permanent and more diverse urban places than boxes surrounded by cars. But it so happens along this corridor in this city, most of the land is spoken for. So that all we can do to have a town center is to have a code in place and then have developers inspired by the change in entitlement, a much higher difference in entitlement was what may be and what there is, and have them pursue the idea of building a town center in collaboration by themselves. But the other part of this project is terribly important, is we're going to have a center of town. We're going to have a center of town as opposed to a town center. The center of town could in fact be some very powerful definition of the right-of-way for 111 as it goes through La Quinta, which I think is totally within our means to do it, and our prerogatives, and which would happen in a much shorter period of time. There is no question about the fact that there is a lot of changes happening in the world, including changes in retail and so on. And we'll be talking about this as we go forward. But the most important thing to imagine is that the definition of a great downtown project depends more than anything else on the proper resolution of the issues of transportation. You're in competition with all your neighbors. It's very clear from an economic point of view, from a visibility point of view, from a long-term investment value point of view. So how to determine a proper way of circulating through town and to give an image to that moment that one circulates through town is a very, very fundamental issue. And I've asked Paul Moore, who is the transportation consultant in our team, Nelson Highgard, Los Angeles, to speak about this. I want to do one last thing, Paul, before you start, and say that Charrette, like the one we're going to be part of the next 2 days, are very collaborative and very open design sessions. We present work after having listened to you, we listen to you, we go back and revisit it, and we repeat this operation multiple times. But there is one moment during the charrettes where we can advocate. We can actually do exactly the opposite. Have you listened to us in the sense that we've done this kind of work so expansively over the last years that we can give you a view of, we provide to you a view of best practices. And we'll do it in the area of transportation today, landscape and streetscape design tomorrow, and building and town center design on Wednesday. And of course, your comments are welcome. You can feel free to interrupt. You can feel to do whatever it is that you want to do to make this a productive and great session. And please come at 6 o'clock tonight for a first discussion on the definition of the right-of-way, which is the first thing we want to get down and get right. Any questions about any of this? Okay, Paul.
I'm going to see if this, it seems to be flashing right now.
Yeah, it's very freaking everybody out. So I don't know why it's doing this. We'll see if we can level through.
Let's see if we can fix that.
So one of the things about transportation and the way that we practice transportation is that we seem not to, I think it's working. Oh, there you go. We seem not to practice what we preach a lot of times. So oftentimes we'll put together a set of goals as a community that might look something like this. You know, these are all these kinds of things we want to see happen, things that we want to achieve and to accomplish. We've got all this technical guidance for transportation that shows us how we can build these things and how we're allowed to do these things. But what we end up putting on the ground a lot of times is everything is separated and far apart in ways that make us get in the car to do every trip that we want to do. And we end up with places like this that certainly don't feel comfortable to be in any way other than inside a car. So there's this disconnect between what we're setting as goals and what we're actually building out there in the world that we need to try to find a way to reconcile. So this is the 111 corridor, and as Stefano said, figuring out how to make 111 something that's not a barrier or not an eyesore is really a core part of what we need to think about today, and will lead us into more of the detail that we're working on throughout the week. So just a little bit about the corridor. You can see the numbers there, 32,000, 36,000. That's how many cars per day move along the corridor. And there's 3 lanes moving in each direction. There's left turn lanes, there's right turn lanes. So there's a lot of lanes out there to carry in. It's a lot of what creates that chasm that's out there. So what does 32, 36,000 mean? How much asphalt do you need to handle that many cars? Yeah, and just this is kind of how that asphalt's allocated. So not only are there a lot of lanes, but the lanes are super wide. The outside lanes are like 18 feet wide, which you could fit 3 cars in side by side. So a lot of asphalt. So this is a street that carries more cars than that. This is Santa Monica Boulevard in West Hollywood. This carries 42,000 cars per day. But this is a really urban environment. It's also a congested corridor. So I mean, it's a nice corridor to walk along. There's really high value retail, a lot of vibrancy going on. But the people who live in West Hollywood are pretty frustrated with congestion along that corridor as well. So there's good and bad that goes with that, and that's a pretty specific kind of environment. If we look at kind of narrow corridors that are out more in this neck of the woods, El Paseo and Palm Desert, it's got 2 lanes moving in each direction, but it's got a lot less traffic, 12,000 cars as opposed to that 32,000 or so that we have out here on 111. 111 in Palm Desert, it has some streetscape, it's got a median, some trees along the edges, but like here, it's got those 3 moving lanes in each direction. So one of the questions that we have is, do we want to really kind of go radically more narrow and move in that kind of urbanized thing like you saw in the West Hollywood example, or do we want to use the fact that we have lots and lots of space out here and find some kind of middle ground where maybe we continue to carry those 3 lanes in each direction, but do that in a way that's more compact, that creates more of a visual signature about what the Quinta is really about, and that allows people to actually cross the street without kind of taking their lives in their hands or having to spend half a minute making that trek across the street. So part of the good news is that within the space that's out there between curbs, there's a lot that we could actually do because those lanes are so wide. We could actually, without moving the curbs if we wanted to, we could put buffered bike lanes out there, protected bike lanes that are separated from the traffic. Wouldn't have to move the curbs, wouldn't have to take away any of those through traffic lanes. So that's something that could pretty quickly calm traffic down a little bit, shorten up those crossings for pedestrians, obviously create some mobility for bikes if that's something that we want to see on the corridor. If we actually decided too that we didn't need all of the dual left turn lanes at each intersection, for example, we could also repurpose some of the space that's in the median right now. That median is really kind of holding space for the dual left turn lanes at a lot of the intersections. If we did that, for example, we could potentially put on-street parking along the street. We could have space for more green space along the edges of the street. So there's really a lot of opportunity, a lot of different ways that we can look at 111. But at the end of the day, while a lot of those things could create really great landscape and visual kind of character, and I think tonight and tomorrow you'll hear some from Gary about what we might be able to do visually. That's still a pretty wide street for that to be kind of your front door for your businesses. And one of the things that we see around the country on streets like this is that when this center street, 111, is not going to be kind of the main street, even if we calm it, even if we make it a more visually appealing street, a lot of redevelopment happens either perpendicular to these big kinds of roads or sort of in one corner of the intersection. So thinking that we're going to get all the businesses to pull up to 111, that these intersections are going to be these kind of hometown main streets, that's probably more ambitious than we're going to be with the private sector development that you heard Stephanos talk about. But there are a lot of examples of, for example, having something perpendicular to the big street be really fantastic. This is, on the left, it's sort of cutting across diagonal. It's Hillsborough Road in Nashville, Tennessee, just kind of a big arterial street. But coming perpendicular off of it, this is the street that you see. So a really nice, narrow, walkable street. When you're driving down Hillsborough, you get a peek and you can see this really cool little village, and you think, hey, next time I come down here, I'm going to make some time, I'm going to stop there, park my car, walk around. So people see it, people notice it, it contributes to the image. And you can actually create these streets in the perpendicular that can have all those characteristics that we want. So that's something in talking this morning that we thought was maybe a promising avenue to explore, is doing some of the calming along 111 itself, make it a safe street and a crossable street, but not maybe create that super urban kind of congestion, and really look for those opportunities perpendicular in terms of the redevelopment that Stephanos mentioned. There are also ways that we can phase these things in. So I think as we move forward again, Gary will show you these really compelling images of what we can do with the landscape and things that we can do if we move the curves and move the drainage on the street. And some of those things can be expensive and can be long-term prospects as we're waiting for redevelopment to happen and those partnerships to happen. But there are things that we can do just with paint and striping in the short term that help to organize things and make things more safe. This is not exactly the same, but kind of an example of what can happen. This is Telegraph Avenue in Oakland, which was 5 lanes of traffic, but they skinnied up to 3 lanes and put bike lanes and buffers along it. Most of the reason for this wasn't to get the bike lanes in, it was to get the traffic calmed down and make it safer for pedestrians. And that's something that really happened. They doubled the number of pedestrians on the corridor in the first year. Retail sales on the corridor went up 9% because it was a more attractive, safer feeling place to be. And the idea long term is that where you see all those sort of green markings, they're going to put medians and landscaping in there and really have it be a beautiful place. But in the short term, while they're waiting for things to happen, pretty quickly, pretty cheaply, they showed people what this could be, how it could operate, and created some excitement around what the long-term potential was and some of the really cool visual things that we'll talk about and show you as we move on later in the week. So again, those are just sort of some ideas about both the issues and the opportunities that we're seeing 111 represents, and some of the things I think that we want to discuss with you guys in terms of what your goals are for the corridor and for the area that you want to see happen. So that's stuff. I don't know if you want to.
Oh, go ahead. It's go ahead for questions. That's fine.
Yeah, if you guys have questions or thoughts, yeah.
Yeah, on the last picture in the street in Oakland, and you keep mentioning pedestrians. I mean, are there a lot of pedestrians along 111, or is it kind of a cycle? There's not because of the traffic, but where would pedestrians come from?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of a chicken and egg here, right? That it's a pretty unpleasant space to be in. Right now, the buildings are way back here, and the street's way over there, and there's plenty of parking. So, if I'm a quarter mile from Staples, I'm probably just going to drive over to Staples because I want to park over there, and why not, right? So, if that's what we want, if that's how we want this to operate, we've already got it. But I think what we're hearing from people is that people aren't exactly happy with the way things look, the way it operates. I mean, we're sitting in an empty store, so probably economically the corridor isn't doing all that it could do. So, if we want to move towards a more sustainable model, kind of in the direction that Stephanos suggested retail is going nationally, having some place where you do park your car and walk to a couple of stores or to a restaurant is an idea that we can explore and can look at. And once you start to set that up, you do start to see pedestrians, and you do need to make it safe for them to be there for inviting them in that way. Yes.
You mentioned El Paseo. Don't they have a free bus that shuttles up and down El Paseo?
Yeah, they do, and it's, yeah, go ahead.
Who pays for that?
The merchants.
What?
The merchants on El Paseo.
Why don't we have that on 111? This morning I left home, I had 5 stops to make. Went to the first stop, took care of business, got in the car, drove to the second one, took care of business, drove to the third one, took care of business, drove to the fourth. This is the 4th stop. I got one more to make. Why am I driving all over creation for 5 stops? Why doesn't the city, in conjunction with Sunline, put in a hop on, hop off shuttle bus that takes me up and down the corridor so I don't have to drive it?
Yeah, it's
And have the retail merchants pay for it.
Sure. No, it's the right question. Sometimes I start my presentations by saying the reason cities were invented was to eliminate the need for transportation, right? That's the whole point of bringing things close together, so you don't actually have to spend so much time, so much energy, so much money getting from place to place. So if we do, if we are able to create this more compact kind of environment where there is the mix of uses, where there is the park once, something like a transit shuttle that can make your 1,000-foot comfortable walk turn into a 4,000-foot easy connection between the places you're trying to go, makes complete sense. But for it to make sense, you sort of have to set things up a little differently than they're set up now. They're set up specifically and explicitly to work for cars right now.
Well, the way we're set up here, with Best Buy being 100 yards off 111, to walk it is not going to be a good task. Now, if you had a bus that would drop you off right at the front door at Best Buy, you'd take that bus, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you'd take the bus again to go to Walmart, to Costco, and get rid of all these traffic car usages. That takes care of our problem, does it not? There's no more land to put in anything significant, so we're stuck with what we have.
Well, so again, a business like we're sitting in that's not generating revenue, at some point these guys are going to do something different with this property. And the question is, do we want things to set up as a Walmart that, the employee, so if you look at Walmarts, for example, Walmarts in a lot of places that have good transit service do decent on transit ridership, mostly with the employees. Most of the people that are going shopping at Walmarts are buying things that they're going to want to put in a car, going to want to drive home. Part of the question is, as this redevelops, as this reforms, do we want the land use to be slightly different? Do we want it to be smaller scale, mix of uses, fine and grain, the kinds of things that do set up well for transit, that do set up well for park months? That's not what we have to do. We can stick with what we've got, which is set up to work specifically for cars, but again, what we're hearing from you guys, what we're seeing with examples like this, is that everything's not clicking on all cylinders right now, so there might be a need to mix things up, change things up a little bit as redevelopment happens going forward. Yes.
You mentioned the sort of perpendicular streets to 111 as real opportunities, which I can definitely believe. You also mentioned that the slowing down of 111, reducing the traffic. Do you think there's some there's a real viability that's possible given the kind of weight of that arterial road and the amount of traffic?
So there's a big difference between capacity and speed. And it actually turns out that you get the most capacity, in other words, you can move the most cars at around 30 miles per hour. Because once you get past that, you get that accordion effect where cars spread out and get further apart. You actually move incrementally less cars at the higher speeds. Turns out that 30 miles per hour is kind of a break point as well for an environment that feels and actually is safe for pedestrians. So the answer is yes. Through design, we can make sure that we're still carrying all 32 or 36,000 of those cars that are going down the street, but we can make them move through it on terms that are consistent and safe with what the context and the environment is. So there are lots of examples, there are lots of tools that we have to actually do both of those things. We can make it slower without making it congested.
Hi. I checked that comprehensive survey that you have on the website. When is that survey closing down? When will you be presenting those results? What's kind of the timeline and where are we at? Because I would imagine that you're already pretty far into this process. So just like the survey question and the timeline, what are we looking at?
Yeah, I can answer that. Let me go up here. So we are about a third into the study, and we had a workshop in March where we had some discovery. We had community members did some exercises. The survey that you mentioned just closed, so we're actually going to have copies available. It'll be on our Highway 111 LQ.com website. We had great response. We had about over 300 people who had taken the survey, and it was pretty telling, but we just completed it. So we will share that with you. What I think we'll do is for our 6 p.m. and then for the next 6 p.m. session, and on, we'll have copies of all the results of the survey, so you do see that. But it was a great turnout, and it's part of this discovery part of this phase of this study. We're now at the beginning of the visioning phase, where we're going to start asking you, and we're going to ask our expert consultants to start setting some of that vision.
And has a budget been set up for these projects?
The budget has been, yes. So the city council, before we started this process, the city council did approve a budget for our consultant help and our staff work for this process. We hope to complete this by September, and that's our goal. And by September, October, we'll provide a draft vision to our planning commission, and then it'll go to the city council for
So you're saying you
approval.
want to close the discovery process by September, is that what you're saying?
Yes, I mean, we're at the discovery now, we're going to the vision, and then we'll start crafting this probably by late summer.
Thank you.
Could you share how the consultants have factored in heat? 6 months or more and 100 plus.
Yeah, so several, Gary and some of the others just walked out to take a look at the street about an hour ago and walked back in covered in sweat, right? So I think we get it. One of the things that we understand is that the sort of the typical distance we can expect a pedestrian to walk might be a little shorter here than it is other places. The places that we are inviting pedestrians to walk, Gary's going to have a big role in making sure that we've got shade and we've got, are paying attention to, where the wind is, where the sun is, all those sorts of things. So we've been made really fully aware that this is a little bit different than other places, and we've got to make sure that we're reflecting that in the ideas that we pitch out to you guys. Yes, sir.
Two-part question. First, do bike lanes actually calm traffic down on roads? And second question, do they make roads safer, especially if cyclists are moving en masse?
So bike lanes per se do not make streets safer. What actually makes streets safer is getting cars to drive more slowly. So, the example you're looking at here, for example, the thing that created the safety here was actually getting the asphalt narrowed down so that instead of drivers weaving in and out of traffic, they were just proceeding in an orderly fashion behind the more conservative drivers that were kind of monitoring and keeping the speed safe on the street. That's actually what creates the safety when you're doing things like skinning up lanes or adding bike lanes or adding buffers. The safety is created because you're actually doing things that are cueing drivers to drive more slowly, more safely, more according to their context. So did that answer the question?
Well, I'm not sure I see how adding space for cyclists necessarily would accomplish that.
So in this case, it's the skinning of the traffic lanes.
But how does the skinning of traffic lanes make the traffic safer?
Because it causes you to drive more slowly, believe it or not. So yeah, there's I can show you some. I think at lunchtime tomorrow we'll probably talk a little bit more about transportation, but I can show you some slides. There's a study in Dallas where they were experimenting with looking at bike lanes, and they took a 3-lane one-way street and they left the 3 lanes with skinning them up and put kind of temporary barriers in to test out the bike lane to see how things were going to work. And they measured the speeds of the cars before and after. So same speed limit signs were up, same number of lanes were there, but on the streets they measured somewhere between 2 miles per hour and 4 miles per hour difference in driving speed occurred just because the lanes were a little bit skinnier. So there's a lot of things psychologically that cause you to choose your driving speed. The speed limit signs are really not among them. Most of us don't pay that much attention to that. So it's how many lanes are moving in a single direction is a big determinant of how fast traffic goes. Like on 111. I'd have to look. I don't know offhand what the width of the lanes in Washington Street is. What I'll tell you is that the lanes out here are essentially 12-foot lanes, although the lane next to the median has 12 feet plus a foot and a half of gutter. And the lane next to the curb on the right-hand lane is basically like 18 feet wide. And then for a lot of it, there's an additional right turn lane outside of that. There is zero engineering guidance in the world that suggests 18-foot lanes are a good idea. The general standard is between 10 and 12 feet.
The reason I ask is because it appears to me that the lanes are a little more narrow on Washington Street, and if you're not going 60 miles an hour on those, people are tailgating and telling you to get the heck out of the way. So I'm not sure that narrowing of 111 is going to work for us, because Washington Street is a freeway, and as a cyclist, I avoid Washington Street completely, even though there was a dedicated bike lane, because of that. It's a freeway. I don't know if that. I gotta agree with the gentleman over here. I'm not sure that that's going to work here, narrowing the lane, because I want to go from point A to point B, and I don't care how narrow or how wide the lanes are, or how much the trees are encroaching on the sidewalk. That doesn't even factor into me. I guess I'm still a teenager at heart.
Yeah, so I'll be happy to take a look at Washington and what the lane widths are out there. But I hear what you're saying. We'll factor that in.
If I could, I don't want to hog up the thing. Actually, I do, but to me, the way 111 is right now, so be it. I think what we should focus on is, if you go into Indian Wells, 111, when I have guests from out of town, I always go up 111 on Indian Wells because that's beautiful. That's what we should do here. Just leave it the way it is, except extend all the palm trees and all that greenery along 111 here. It's a done deal.
Yeah, so, and that's valid. Part of the reason on these ideas that I showed, the bike lanes and buffer bike lanes, for example, is that's sort of the cheapest way to skinny things up and get things calmed down. Yeah. But if that's not how we want to use that space can be used for planting palm trees or doing all kinds of things that really create an image that we feel like would be consistent with La Quinta and something that we want to see. It's just that there's more money in that. So, but again, part of what I talk about here is that this is phasing. That sometimes we can use the paint in the short term to get the street acting the way we want it to, knowing that long term how we really want to spend the money and how we really want to make changes is by creating that kind of image of that place that you want to take your friends from out of town.
I just had a couple of more reactions to your important point. The first one is that you want to have an identity of your own. I agree with you, the Indian Wells section is beautiful, but if you continue through here, you wouldn't know you're here. You would think you're someplace else. That's one issue. The second one is that the speedier, first of all, this road has 6 lanes. The outer lanes are speedier, or should be speedier than the inner lanes. The inner lanes should be lanes that allow you to turn right, and there are also lanes where people should be able to slow down enough and decide to get off. Because one of the problems with 6-lane roads that are conceived as throughways or freeways or whatever you want to call them, is that they're so speedy that nobody can even think about the possibility of turning right or left because of the pressure to just go straight at maximum speed. So in any case, there has to be a way to make people to slow down and consider buying something in this town. It's actually the fundamental reason for doing this project, trying to regenerate the retail and commercial potential for obvious tax reasons and for your well-being in general. And particularly in an environment where this kind of shopping seems to be actually not doing very well. And more than seems, it's actually not doing very well. I don't mean this particular place, but this pattern that you talked about before, about another pattern. So it is also a complete chicken and egg question, right? I mean, nobody would walk out there, but nobody would walk there because there's nowhere to walk and nobody to walk to go to. But these people want to do something else that has to do with walking. Who takes the first move? Well, the first move is a vision plan that says, okay, we're not committed to doing it, but if you were to do it, that's how you may want to do it. So you would do it on the roadside, and that's how you would do it on on the development side. And the interesting thing is that you, me, anywhere might have the idea, well, the only thing I want to do on the street is just go right through it. It's perfectly okay. That's how we live our lives. But in terms of urban development, and particularly from the point of view that it benefits to the city, I think, there are trade-offs. There are trade-offs, and one decision or one solution or one way of doing business prejudices another outcome. And in this case, the prejudice outcome through great speed through here is reduce sales on the commercial front. So those are the kinds of things we should totally think about. This is the beginning of this discussion, but then not the end. On Wednesday, we'll have a different kind of discussion. Please.
Just a comment on that. 78% of the revenue for the city of La Quinta comes from sales tax on the businesses on the Highway 111 corridor. But just one fact. Another fact is, and I love Indian Wells. I love driving through it. It's very attractive. 60% of Indian Wells revenue comes from golf courses and resort hotels. It's a lot easier to make golf courses and resort hotels feel warm and friendly than it is to make businesses feel warm and friendly. So I think, and I think your comments point that out, I think we have to think about, what trade-offs and accommodations are we willing to make in recognition of a lot of constraints that I think are put on the Highway 111 corridor. One of them being economic, one of them being our neighboring communities, and we are a thoroughfare of traffic. So I just think, I don't envy the challenge that you face, because I think creating something that we would like to see in the Highway 111 corridor from an aesthetic point of view, from a beautification point of view, and maintaining the elements of transportation and the elements of business revenue is a real challenge.
Those are the three issues I think we're going to be discussing in the next 3 days and beyond. These are the three ones.
Yeah, and I think for all of us, we like to be very real about those trade-offs. So, if we do change the image, if we do kind of reorganize the lanes on 111, it will take longer to go through the stretch of it. How much longer? Does it take 30 seconds longer? Does it take 1 minute longer? And depending on that, is that too much trade-off, right? For what you got, we think we're getting enough back to have us and our neighbors take an additional 30 seconds moving through. So those are questions not for us, but